Welcome to a new episode. Week 8, Market Dynamics is the topic today in our Transformation Dynamics briefing series. The topic today is about accelerating growth and unlocking potential. And again, we will be taking a look at how the key strategies and tactics apply and play out. The key question is how to grow faster. So while you were planning this for your projects and digital transformation with a nice S-shaped curve that everybody wants to see, often the reality is that projects fall way below the expectations. And then a lot of questions and a lot of panic arises. So the question is how to accelerate growth and how to move the needle really, and how to keep growing. So how can you build on that success story? My name is Thomas Wittig. I am the CEO at Wittigonia, and you can reach me at these Twitter handles at Wittigonia or at @Wittig. I'll be leading you to the session today. And again, the question is about how to accelerate and sustain growth. We'll be looking in this free webinar at the strategic feedback structures for customer base and revenue growth. And I will talk about the 10 levers for growth and areas of intervention. And then I will go into detail and do a deep dive on 4 key growth tactics. And we will take a look at how they play out and how they typically impact the growth scenarios and what the impact and also the consequences and risks are associated to that. As always, there's more material available in the extended course website. And for orientation, here's where we are on our learning roadmap. So we are in week 8, pretty far advanced. And as you know, we are doing 2 iterations. So the first one was about the general dynamics of adoption. So the go-to-market, launch strategies, growth dynamics. And you may want to review that as well if this whole topic is new to you and you find this content interesting. Again, this is a free live webinar. It takes about 30 to 40 minutes typically, plus some Q&A time. Typically, we also have a discount on opportunity in the live webinars for the extended course, which you should see on your right-hand side if you join this webinar live during the webinar link. Later on in the replay and on the YouTube channel, you won't see that opportunity. So then the next chance is, of course, the next webinar. We'll have 2 or 3 iterations going on, and there you can join again. There's also the YouTube channel, so YouTube/Wittigonia, and the Facebook group with the name Dynamics of Transformation. And in the extended course, you find a lot of videos, materials. I provide some group coaching there via Q&A and discussion forums. And there's a lot of bonus content, tools, and templates. Let me recap again for those who were just new and joining this session today. We started out with the general feedback structure. When we talk about transformation dynamics and leading general business transformation projects or change projects, there are several areas that we are interested in. Of course, the organization, the R&D component, which brings out the product, and the further we drive the product progress, the more support we get from the organization and the marketplace, of course. Now, in this particular segment, we are looking into the customer-based growth. So what's happening in the marketplace, in our installed base, and how do we win customers. We then went into the details in each one of these sectors, and I showed how the dynamics typically play out. And this is both from experience from running larger scale projects and smaller agile projects, but also from my experience as a system dynamicist. So I put a model together that explains the dynamic, and it's kind of a flight simulator that you can use in order to fast forward in the future and see how your tactics play out. So we looked at these areas. We looked at the organizational dynamics, customer base migration topics, the general market dynamics. So what's the reason for this S-shaped growth curve? A lot of people really don't know why this growth curve is actually happening like this, and also what's happening on the project dynamics side. And here we looked at the topics: why projects run late and over budget, and what happens if you try to pull off a project, an R&D project in a service organization. So productization is the key word here. And then today I want to look specifically at the intersection between the market dynamics and driving growth and the organization. And of course, there's some level of staffing involved in that and some allocation of marketing resources. But at the same time, it's also interlinked to the project dynamics, which we'll cover more in the extended topics for this segment. So, of course, when the project schedule is slipping, that has an adverse effect on the organization. But if things go well, we get a lot of support. So we have this phenomenon of more success to the successful. But also when the project is not going so well and we have quality issues, then it has a severe impact on the market adoption. So that's an, let's say, a feedback loop that we'll explore later on. So we looked at the market archetype, basically, and we made it simple in our first iteration and said there's an addressable market which may be growing, or there's an outflow in the market from, let's say, for example, driven by demographic change. And so that addressable market basically gives us the potential customers who are then adopting our solution, becoming actual customers until they are churning away and becoming lost customers. And the key was there also to figure out what is the impact of our go-to-market strategies, timing, and product readiness. And then I explained three major sources of adoption and rates of purchase. One is we looked in the sales area, then adoption from marketing, and most importantly, the adoption from word of mouth. That's what we want to have, because that's giving us a very nice accelerating growth curve at minimal cost. And then we looked at how the system is behaving, and we figured out that this actual growth curve comes because we have a positive dominating feedback loop in the first part until this inflection point, and then we have a saturating or balancing feedback loop coming into play here. And that has an effect on the scale of for example, the unit cost and the actual cost per customer, or customer acquisition cost, you could say. And then I put together a couple of online simulations, and one or two I have released already, so there's more to come. The first one was about market dynamics, so that's available. And there you can play with this model and play with the sliders here and see how your growth tactics actually play out. So you can select, actually produce your own scenarios and store them and compare them one with each other, how they actually played out over time. So I would encourage you to use that and then share your insights and also questions in the discussion forum. So now we're taking it a step further, and we're going to look at really our architecture, our strategic architecture for the growth. And we have to figure out how do we need to extend this structure. So we started, as I said, with this basic and simplified, you could sort of call it the customer journey, but there's something missing here, of course. And for example, there doesn't seem to be any churn, so that's a problem. Then there's no renewal cycle, and also usually customers are not buying straight away. They're usually trying and then buying. So that leads us to a little bit more refined model here. And what I've done here is basically we kept the basic customer journey in place. So we have the potential customers, then they become trial customers, then they become actual or paying customers, and then eventually they churn away, or the contracts are expiring. For example, software as a service solution expires after 12 months. We have to make some effort to renew them again. And of course, there are other areas where we have some leakage here. For example, during the trial, customers may not like it, they churn away. And also our general potential customers could become non-adopters, or they leave the market altogether. So that could happen here. Now, the question is, what are the levers now that we should take a look at? Well, first of all, the adoption still is the same. So we have adoption from our sales activities, which is driven by the sales staff and their productivity and their win-loss ratio. And secondly, we have our adoption from marketing. So we basically assume we have a certain marketing spending rate, and we have a certain cost per customer. So, for example, you pay $2 or $5 per customer or per click, and then there's a certain conversion fraction or adoption fraction associated to that. So that gives us customers as leads, and they become trial customers. And then here again is our word of mouth, and there we have to factor in the word of mouth is not only driven by the actual customers, but now also the trial customers who are meeting the potential customers, and through their contact frequency and adoption probability, they would basically also contribute to a certain rate here. So that's the basic structure. And then, of course, as we have the renewal cycle up here, we also need to apply some certain magic here in winning back our customers, or making sure they are staying engaged and active and not becoming dormant, by applying some sales and marketing magic to convert them again, or to keep them loyal. So now the question, as always, is how does this scenario play out? And here are some of the parameters, and here you can see already when we put this together into an online simulation, there will be more bells and whistles, so you can actually play with very different scenarios here. But I want to keep it fairly simple, so we start out again with 100,000 customers and a pretty straightforward setting. Not going through all of this, you're welcome to rewind and look at it later. But basically how the scenario is playing out, first we are interested in what's happening to these flows here. So the flow from potential customers to trial customers, and from trial to buying customers. And that's pretty much how it looks like. So the adoption rate, which is this flow here from the yellow to the green box to become the trial customers, that's accelerating first until we have depleted our initial budget. So I set that to 100K. And then as we are generating revenue, we can dedicate a certain fraction of our profits to sales and marketing activities. So that gives us an accelerating growth. And then we have to wind down the effort because we're depleting the market here. But with a little delay and also stretched out far more is the second curve. So that's this rate here, because there we have assumed, let's say very generously, a 100-day trial period, and customers can choose to adopt and purchase the product or not during that period. So that's already an interesting behavior. And you can see, of course, there's a certain peak. And typically when these peaks arise, that makes management, especially sales and marketing people, very nervous, because when you're in the market with declining rates of growth, that's not so much fun to be in, and you have a lot of questions to answer then. So what happens to the stocks of the customers, the potential customer trial and actual customers? Well, as we are actually growing and as we are winning the customers here, I should switch to this picture, which is more legible. So this is the total number of customers that we are winning, and the blue line here is the total number of customers at any given point in time that are trying the product. So as you see, as we are adding in more and more customers to join our trial program, we are depleting the pool of potential customers. And as I said before, the magic of the S-curve is that in this first part, there's a reinforcing feedback loop which dominates the growth, and that leads to accelerating growth. And that is driven by more and more customers actually influencing potential customers. And this is like a snowball effect that's going very nicely uphill here. And then as this pool is becoming depleted, we see a declining growth because less and less customers are flowing from here through our customer journey. So that's an important thing. And in 9 out of 10 meetings, when I'm asking people about, okay, how does your S-shaped growth curve come together? 9 out of 10 times, people really don't have a good answer for that. So this is the explanation. Now, this is what's happening on the staffing side. We have a chance to build a nice sales force to up to 85 or something people here, and then winding that down as our market is depleted. And also our budget for sales and marketing is building up nicely. And then as the market is depleted, we are allocating less and less budget. And that leads to interesting profit figures. So at first we, of course, are going very deep in the red, but then we are hitting a level of profitability. Now, this was a basic scenario, but it wasn't really realistic because we didn't talk about churn. So let's make it more realistic, and we are assuming a 1% churn rate for the people not adopting the product. We have a trial churn rate of 50%, which means there's a 50-50 chance that people will actually purchase the product and have a paid product or not. And then also the actual paying customers will churn away with a rate of about 1% per month. And 95% are renewing, and a fraction of those actually have a need to be attended by a salesperson or through marketing activities. And also our contract duration is 12 months, which means that after 12 months, we have the first inflow of customers renewing their contracts. And so this is what is happening now. And I'm showing here the before-after picture. So this was the baseline before. And with the more realistic assumption, you see what's happening. And that comes actually closer to what we see in the real life. So the rate of buying is actually much less accentuated and takes on much longer, and the peak is not so high. And also for the customer base chart, you see that it actually takes much longer to attain a certain fraction of the market. But you also see that we're not ending up winning, let's say, the complete market, but we are also losing a lot of customers along the way. And that's one explanation why, even if you have a very interesting marketplace, and even if you are alone in the marketplace, the dynamics in the marketplace could lead to a very different picture from the beginning to later on downstream in your project. So that's something to keep in mind. Also from a staffing level, we need the staff much longer, and it's peaking a little bit later. And also the same happens for the budget. On the revenue side, the financial side, there's also a very important difference. So the run rate, the revenue per month that we see here in any given month is much lower than, of course, in the realistic run here. So because we take much more time to win the customers, and even if we have let's say, attained our cruising altitude here, our level of revenue run rate is much lower than in the more idealistic case. So the question is how to close the performance gap. And actually what I said at the onset of this call is, first of all, we want to accelerate. Acceleration means that, let's say, for any given point in time, let's say level of operations, we want to have that much sooner. So we don't want to have it in month 45, but rather in month 24, or even, let's say, in our first year of operation. And secondly, we want to grow. So we want to grow the level of revenue or customers that we acquire at a much higher rate and at a different order of magnitude. So how do we get there? So let's go back to our archetype here that we put together. And the question is, what are the areas where we can make an impact? And there are, of course, many areas, but I want to circle around this picture and point out the most important one. So I call this the levers for growth. First of all, we can play with the trial time, right? Because the sooner the people end their trial time, the faster they become customers. Of course, there could be a downside, and a shorter trial time could lead to people actually not adopting, so we could influence the churn here. That's this arrow. Second, we can play with the renewal policy and switch to auto-renewal. But still, some of the customers could churn away, so we can address actually the churn fraction here, which is the most important thing to do, and to do that early on. Then, of course, what can we do in order to accelerate the word of mouth adoption here? So that is giving us a boost for our business. Then we can take a look at our leads conversion and do some SEO tactics, etc. We can find more cost-effective sources for leads. We can drive an outreach program, which is probably very important here, because if the customers decide already at the beginning of the customer journeys that, well, I'm not sure, this is not for me, then there's no chance that we can even engage them in a trial or reach out to them. So there we would do some different forms of brand campaigns, awareness campaigns, outreach, evangelism, etc. Then, of course, we can play with our sales effectiveness and give people, for example, the better tools, the better sales and marketing tools. And marketing tech startups are thriving these days because there's a lot of great stuff to do here. And so this can have an impact on our win-loss ratio and the productivity of our sales team. And of course, we can think about our staffing efficiency. So not only hiring people smarter, but working with, let's say, more flexible capacity or with more cost-effective staffing options. And then last but not least, the renewal area. So here we can make sure that customers whose contracts expired are renewing faster and at a higher rate. So that really requires some engagement from the sales, marketing, or customer success team side here. Now, there's a lot to say about these, and behind each one of these boxes, there's a myriad of different growth tactics, and we will not go through all of these, but I want to focus specifically now on 3 to 4 areas that I'd like to demonstrate what the implications are if we are attacking these. And again, this is all about deciding where you are planning your growth initiatives, your growth tactics, and what is your growth strategy? How do you make sure that the growth is actually happening? So let's take the first one, the trial time. And the trial time, as a reminder, is basically influencing these two flows here, these valves. So if we decrease the trial time, and let's say we go from our original value from 100 to 30, for some 30 days, then we should see a faster rate or higher rate of flowing from trial to customer. But also, since we are shutting down the customers sooner, we should also see an increased rate here. So let's see if that's happening. So we reduced from 100 days. There you can see 2 simulation runs. First one is for 100 days, and the second one is for 30 days. That's the red line here, right? And there you can see already that the number of trial customers is actually decreasing. So we're reducing the number of trial customers. But then corresponding to that, our uptake for the actual customers and our number of actual customers, total number, is increasing, and it's increasing faster and sooner. So that is a tactic that actually works. Now, of course, you have to test the elasticity and the sensitivity. So if you find out that decreasing the trial time from, let's say, 100 days to 30 days is okay, and it doesn't have an adverse effect, then you're good to go. But if you find out that if you decrease it much further to, let's say, 2 weeks, and that has an adverse effect of the fraction of people actually renewing or churning away, then you need to move the sweet spot of the trial time again a little bit, adjust that. So that's, of course, an important thing. So accelerating the churn from trial means actually that the churn rate, so the flow of customers from the trial, is actually increasing. So this is the green line here, the 30 days. So you have a peak there of about the month 38 or something, and you can see already that a lot more customers are, we're losing a lot more customers. But at the same time, so this is the lost customers actually resulting from this. But this may actually be a good thing, because if the customers actually do not have any intention to purchase and become paying customers, then we might want to get them off the trial campaigns or the trial product and make some space for customers who would like to purchase them. Second lever, churn reduction. So where can we apply that logic here? Now, first one obviously is the churn of paying customers. And this is the most painful churn, because There we're losing our revenue potential. But there are other areas. As I mentioned before, the trial customers also could choose to leave our customer base. Now, this may or may not be a desirable thing, but let's say this is something that we want to make sure that a lot more people are staying in the pool and more people are actually flowing through this part of the customer journey versus this route here. And the third part would be very upstream in the process here. So that's where we can reduce the number of people who are immediately becoming non-adopters and make sure that a lot more people are getting in touch with our product. So there are a lot of tactics that we can deploy here. Now, generally what I recommend when we talk about churn is first to figure out why are customers churning? Who is churning? Why are they churning? When are they deciding to churn away? And what are the different points? Because depending on their reasons and depending on the place in the customer journey, there might be different tactics that we deploy. So, for example, if a customer is churning away right here at the beginning, we might say, hey, why don't you try the product, and we will also help you to get up to speed by engaging our customer success team. So it could be one tactic, for example. And then if customers are churning away here, we typically want to know that very early on. So we would do let's say an in-stream survey somewhere when before the contract is expiring, to figure out what is their perception of the quality, how likely are they going to stay, how likely are they going to recommend to others. So that's also an indicator not only for the churn and for their loyalty, but for them being an active reference for other customers. So that's something we really want to find out. And now you can see that in the, again, new world of software as a service or service-driven business models, it is super important to, again, dig deep into the understanding the drivers for loyalty, the drivers for satisfaction, the drivers for value, and these are different drivers. So it's not enough just to do a general customer satisfaction survey, but you really have to dig deep into the driver analysis. And I might actually include a short module about that and an expert interview in the extended material and on the YouTube channel, because not a lot of people are really aware on how to do this effectively. Now, one thing that I forgot here to mention is there's also let's say usually a minor flow from the customers who are expired and then becoming lost in our space here. So they are not renewing. And there we, of course, have means like sales and marketing and customer success teams to actually go after these customers and re-engaging them again, winning them back. And it's usually much less expensive to win customers back or to make sure they're renewing and spend time here than it is upstream here. So this is usually more time consuming. It costs more to win customers here. So let's make sure that we reduce the churn early on. Now, what's happening when we reduce the churn? So first of all, I looked at the trial churn reduction in our base case scenario. So what's happening here is that we actually, if we reduce the churn, of course, we keep a lot of more customers. And at any given point in time, so if we address this nicely early on, you can see in month 30, we can keep almost, well, let's say 80% more customers than without addressing the churn. And that leads to a higher number of customers. So we're going here from roughly, let's say, 28K to 42K customers at the end of the planning horizon here. So that's significant. Again, the financial impact could be also interesting, something I haven't talked about because there's also a lot more structure to the simulation model with the financial impact. But here we actually have the actual customers, and we look at the baseline, which is the green curve here, then a churn reduction by 50% on all the outflows of churn, and then here only reducing the trial churn. You see there's also another incremental opportunity here. But what happens when we take a look at the revenue per customer, and we're just considering all the customers we have ever acquired and all the revenue we have ever made from the customers. And there you can see very nicely that it's actually growing at a faster rate. So if we address the churn early on, we can bet on a higher revenue per customer. So that is very nice. And this is almost a 500 difference on the revenue per customer, which is quite significantly. And corresponding to that, we are also reducing the customer acquisition cost across all customers. So that's also a very nice movement, which actually gives us a positive impact on the profitability. So the more churn we remove, the more revenue per customers we are making, and also the less cost we're making. Now note there's a little bit of an uptick here if we reduce all the churn rate. Why is that? Well, because if we have more customers in our customer base, and then we have the renewal cycle going on, we might have a higher number of customers that we need to pay attention to. So that's drawing a lot more resources, of course, in terms of people, marketing budget, etc. Something to keep in mind. It may or may not be desirable. It depends really on your specific situation. Now, the third area, which I'm really passionate about, because this is all about free high growth marketing, I want to talk about how to unleash the potential of word of mouth. Again, for orientation, what are we talking about? Here's the area of word of mouth that happens basically through the interaction of existing customers paying or trial customers with potential customers. Keep in mind, word of mouth can go both ways. It can go very positively, so people actually feel strongly and positive and favorable about the product, so it can accelerate the growth. But if you have a bad quality, or worst case, even a product recall, for example, a topic that I will talk about soon in a very separate briefing session, that can have a dramatic impact on your word of mouth, and then the spiral can go down the hill and down the drain, really. So basically what that means is that it can generate accelerating growth, and also it can generate accelerating decline, something we will see later in a different setting. So what can we do here? First of all, we can do, for example, something with referral. And there are these leverage points here. So we can work with the number of contacts that people have, and we can work with their adoption fraction. And secondly, we can also what I call prime the pump, which means what would happen if we, at the beginning of our growth strategy, have already customers in these pools. So we don't need to acquire them manually or through magic marketing, but we have already customers here. Now, how could this happen? This can, of course, happen if we, for example, run a pre-release program or a large-scale beta test, something like that. So we have people already lined up before we actually officially launch the product and bring in more customers. So what is that doing to our growth strategy and demand profiles here? So this is a simulation of the strategy I call it priming the pump. Basically, we have a larger, more or less larger pre-release campaign. And a lot of software companies are doing this, of course. So here, the blue line is you have the base run. And there you can see I did 2 simulations. So I basically incubated the system with 100 trial customers, only trial customers, and then 1,000 trial customers. And you can see already that makes quite a big impact here. And of course, the number of customers that you have in the system is quite important. So if you start with 1 or 10 or 15, that really doesn't make much of a difference. But if you, let's say, you bite the balance and say, okay, we might even give the first 100 customers a free account for a year or 2 or whatever, or a month, right? That could make a dramatic impact here on your growth trajectory. And there you can see it already in the rate of growth. It is also accelerating. So you start already on a higher level here, and then you have the growth actually happening much sooner. So what happens if we increase the contact frequency? So doubling the contacts between the adopters and the non-adopters or not adopters increases the word of mouth. So that was our proposition here. And that's actually true. So here we doubled the number of contacts. Now, how could you do that? For example, through a referral campaign. A lot of software companies are doing that. And the well-known tactics is, for example, the free email marketing program providers. They typically include a tagline below the email that you send, and they say this was sent by Outlook, Gmail, and what have you. And so that automatically increases the number of contacts. Or you can ask customers to share their listing. If you have a, let's say, real estate listing website, share that on Facebook or other social media channels. So that's immediately increasing the number of potential contacts. And you see the magic that is happening here. So it is increasing. But also note that there is also a decline happening much earlier that we have to keep into account. Again, this is happening on the sales rate much sooner and quite a little bit higher. So it's peaking much earlier. But caution. Why? Because as we are accelerating the growth and we're moving up the growth curve, that means we are depleting our potential market, our addressable market much faster. So the curve is moving in this direction here, which means that in the basic run, we had, let's say, a customer potential until about the month 45, and now the show ends pretty much shortly after month 30. So why is that important? Well, we better have our next generation product or market in place. Product means that, let's say, we have a new upgrade to the product. Market means that, for example, we have a local language version. Original was in Spanish, or sorry, English, and the next one is in for the Spanish-speaking market, Chinese, German-speaking market, what have you. Now, and ideally, that product needs to be ready before the rate of adoption declines. Now that you are familiar with this, speak about, let's say, system dynamics, you know that the adoption rate is the flow of customers here. So the actually what happens between the baseline here is we accelerated the product, but ideally what should happen is that we can build on this acceleration and then unleash a next growth wave. So we have entered the new market or the new pool of addressable customers in time to build on this. Otherwise, it would end up in starting with a decline here because customers are churning away. Now, even though this curve looks very nicely, if you really look at the flows, the flow of buying customers, what you notice is here this gap. So this innovation is actually coming too late because you have already seen a peak. The rate of growth is declining. Salespeople get nervous. They're not getting their bonuses anymore, not meeting the quotas. Executives going crazy and ballistic because they don't know what's happening. How could this happen? And on the more importantly, on the people side of the house, you are crossing an interesting gap because suddenly you realize when you hit this peak here in month 30, oh, we don't need that many salespeople anymore. We cannot actually afford it because the budget doesn't really allow it. So there you're falling into this gap. Now, and the gap actually needs to be filled again then very quickly as the new product hits the market. And a lot of organizations cannot bridge this gap here. So the timing is really crucial. And there you see where a lot of transformation projects and where the dynamics come in, because if you don't have the innovation management right and the timing right, this is what's going to happen. So in a more optimized world and let's say an ideal case, it should look something like this. So it should not be the green curve, but it should look more like the red curve. Why? Because then we can build on our growth rate here, and we're not missing the point of basically decline here. And that means also on the sales and the staffing side that we could make a small sidestep here, but then we can keep growing our sales team from, let's say, about 50 people that we had here to about 100 people. And we don't have this gap where we have to first ramp up people, then we need to let people go in a very short period of time. And then even in a much shorter period of time, we have to hire more people than we had ever before. So that sounds like a crazy thing to do. So you're better off figuring out what is the right timing and when should you start investing. And you can see already by the time you have launched the product, you cannot rest on your laurels. You need to have already your next generation product in play so that you can build on this dynamic. Now, the beauty about this growth tactic is, of course, that if you go back to our archetype, by that time you are launching this new product, you have already a lot of adopters. So your rate of growth is actually accelerating. And you can see that here. So we just added 100K more potential customers, and you can see already that this rate of growth for this curve is already shooting up here very nicely. So that's what you want to have. Now, where you go from here? These were only 3 tactics, and there's much more to say about this. In the extended version, I'll talk more about other growth tactics and how they play out. And I'm actually planning to publish the sequel of the Market Dynamics 1 simulation called, well, Market Dynamics 2 very shortly, probably in the next couple of days. And I'm looking forward to your feedbacks, your insights, and please share that in the course and preferably also on the Facebook website. Now, group coaching will be provided in this extended course here. So if you go here, you will find this nice summer-colored course, and it's called Digital and Transformation Dynamics. And note that there are 2 or more offerings there. So there's an offering about innovation, leadership, and other things that you don't see here. But Business Transformation Dynamics was an earlier briefing that we did. This is the course website and the page that you want to go to. Okay, so as a recap for today, before I go to the Q&A, market dynamics really depend on the feedback structure in the business model. That's something we need to understand, and that goes above and beyond normal business planning and above and beyond your canvas. You really need to understand how the resources and the flows and feedback loops interact with each other. And the product and service adoption is driven by the flow rates of sales and marketing. So we cannot order customers to come in. We have to work with them and make sure that they have the right conditions to sign up for our product and stay with the product. And management can influence the market success with a lot of key strategies and tactics. So in detail, first, do yourself a favor and dive into this and understand the feedback structure. I made it a bit easier for you by giving you the briefings and also the tools for it, not only the simulation tools, but some templates. Explore the interventions and impact possibilities. And this is a good strategy dialogue to have within your team. Where should we start? What is the priority? What happens if we pull this lever? And make sure that you're pulling the lever in the right direction. Not only knowing which lever to pull, but pulling it in the right direction is really important. Again, keep in mind the discussion about the timing for the trial period. So that's a good example where you can have different mental models, different opinions. So there you can play with it a little bit and test it out. And I would encourage you to conduct first small experiments and test the effectiveness, but also the let's say the sensitivity around the parameters that you have in your business model. And then you will understand the rates of change and how to allocate and reallocate resources. And you may also want to check out the episode I made on the dashboard, the KPI dashboard, because you really need to understand what's happening and have the right KPIs on your dashboard. So there I was leading through this, and it maps to this episode here as well. And then, of course, timing of the innovation and growth strategy is crucial, not for your current horizon product, so the one that you're very excited about, that you just launched, but also all the things that you have in the pipeline. If you start dreaming up the new product when the sales hits a peak and things go down, you're already into big trouble. So more about this in the extended course module. And again, there's an intro offer for the course module today on display on your right-hand side. This webinar will be made available as a replay again on the YouTube channel, youtube.com/Wittigonia. And the Facebook site is Dynamics of Transformation. And of course, go to academy.wittigonia.com, and there you see the course, or just to our website, wittigonia.net. There's a ton of information there. No risk involved, 30 days money back guarantee, no questions asked. I think that goes without saying. All right, so that brings us to the Q&A today. First of all, thank you for hanging in. Today was a little bit of a longer episode, but I wanted to make sure that we have the full context of this important topic. So as always, you can submit questions before you sign up, and also from the previous webinars, because there's some cohesion there, and also you can send some live questions here. So one question is about can the whole thing break down and collapse? Yes, of course, and that's actually a good question. So I will do I will show you a case study actually, and also show you how this model actually applies in the real world, in real-time, real-world project setting. So I will do a calibration of this model to a real case, and there you can see how things played out over time. And we can also use the model to experiment what would derail a project completely. So where you have an initial overshoot and then collapse. So I'll show you what the conditions are. Now, to put it up front, this typically happens when, let's say, your rates of churn are much higher than your customer acquisition rates, and when you have a good degree of word of mouth in your customer base. So that's where you see an overshoot and collapse typically. Or when you have a B2B, B2C business model or a partner channel, because there we have the conditions for a system dynamic that plays out in an overshoot and collapse scenario. Now, another question is, how does this relate to the previous seminar about development and R&D? Now, as I mentioned before, the adoption is of course also related to the quality and the availability of the product. Now, if your next generation product is delayed for whatever reasons, then you could see already what the implications are on this side. But vice versa, if your current product doesn't deliver and doesn't produce the revenue run rate, you may not be able to invest in your next generation product. So that's a very basic feedback loop that we have to keep in mind. And these things are related to each other, of course. Next question, how can the organization derail the effort? Well, I don't think that any organization would derail an innovation intentionally, at least that's my hope. But let's say an organization dynamic could lead to challenges. For example, if the organization doesn't perceive the progress from the market space or from the development market space, for example, people don't realize that the new product is actually taking off and making money because they don't see that in their revenue reports, paychecks, etc. So that could drive a lot of questions, and then people would be less inclined, and that has ripple effects through the organization. Makes it harder to engage people in new initiatives, harder to engage external people for recruiting, etc. And again, worst case, if you have a quality disaster, who wants to work in an organization that is just going through a product recall or a major problem in the supply chain? Not really fun job to be there. There are more fun jobs to do. So that's a couple of connections, but good topic. We will make a link to the other sector, and there you can play a little bit with this connection between the sectors. This question I really didn't understand. What if the what if the customer acquisition costs are really high? Well, basically what that means, if your customer acquisition costs are very high, is as a consequence, you of course have to hold the customers much longer in your customer base, so that it's actually paying off to win the customers. But also what it means upstream is that with a given budget, your customer acquisition rate is much lower. So if I, let's say, have a budget of 100K and my cost per lead, per marketing lead is $2, I can basically generate 50K leads. Now, if the marketing cost or customer acquisition cost is much higher, then obviously I can generate less leads. So marketing becomes less effective. And that's always a question of balancing between the different possibilities and levers to push customers into the customer journey, so that we can unleash the power of word of mouth promotion there. So you can do it with direct sales, let's say people in field sales, or in let's say a customer center, etc. Or you could do it through marketing. So it really depends on the product there. Okay, yeah, here's a question. Okay, great. What about the other tactics? Yeah, I went quickly through 10 growth tactics, and we can explore them in the extended course, so you're welcome to join. I did a deep dive on 4 of these tactics, 3 or 4 today, and there's actually much more. There's also some growth hacks to share about this, how to do this. But I hope you got a sense of how they play out, and the questions indicate that people get really interested about this topic. So my whole motivation about this whole briefing series is to give you a different perspective on the different areas, and inject the systems thinking and also systems acting in this field of dynamic transformation, or let's say business model innovation and digital transformation. So I hope you find this interesting, and keep in mind there are a couple more episodes to come. I'm planning to speak more about organizational dynamics, supply chain dynamics, and probably I might actually do some bonus specials where we dive more deeply into the connection between the different sectors. And from the questions that I received by now, I see that there's a lot of interest in the area. So thanks again, and good luck with your transformation projects. See you soon.